I almost didn't post this video. And that's a shame. Because this video is just an honest discussion about what I don't know and what I am learning. I almost didn't post this video because I'm burdened. And I know in 2020, in our current climate, a white guy shouldn't be burdened. But I am. It's how I feel. So let me tell you a little bit about why I'm burdened. When I first heard of Ahmaud Arbery, and I got the details of the case and I watched the video, I was sickened. Because as a police officer, I worked 20 years as a police officer. I retired 2 years ago. I've been a professional speaker for 10 years now. But as a police officer, my wife and I live in a new neighborhood. My family and I take walks almost every night. We go into houses under construction every night. And when I saw the Ahmaud Arbery case and people were coming out trying to say things like, well, he was in a house that was under construction, he was probably going to steal stuff. That's me with a lighter skin tone. I'm in a house every night because we just like to see it being built. Watching stuff being created is fascinating to me and my family. My oldest daughter is an interior design major in college. This is in her lane. This is what we do. Shouldn't get me killed. It's not okay. And as I was debating about how best to address this situation with the platform I've been given, in the midst of trying to process that, George Floyd was killed in Minneapolis by officers that wore a uniform very similar to the one that I proudly wore for 20 years. And it's not okay. And when I first saw that video, what bothers me the most is the officer who stood by silently while George Floyd was knelt on for almost 9 minutes until he died. It could have been stopped. It should have been stopped, but it wasn't. And here I was trying to figure out what to do about the Ahmaud Arbery case, and I was silent. And I was frustrated. Because I don't want to be just another white voice talking about what black people should or shouldn't be doing, so I'm not talking to black people today. You have every right to be angry. You have every right to feel unheard. I'm talking mostly to white people today. Because we need to make some changes. And it's going to happen when we start having discussions. This is what I do today. I help businesses and organizations improve their communication. I'm in some circles considered an expert in communication. There are some communication issues that will help us with these discussions. Not the least of which is, can we start using qualifying words again? I just want to help the conversation move forward. Can we start using qualifying words? Because when we start a conversation or when we say something to somebody like, the rioters are protesting, or all these protesters are looting and tearing things up, that's just not true. There are protesters. There are rioters. Those are two different people with two completely different agendas. Do not lump them all together. When we say things like, police are racist, police are out to kill you, that's not true either. And that shuts down open, honest communication. But when we say things like, some people are moving from protesting to rioting, that's true. And that's something we can talk about. When you say some police officers are racist and shouldn't be wearing a badge, that's true. And that's something we can talk about. That doesn't make anybody defensive because you've qualified it with the word some. So start using qualifying words in your conversations, because if you want to start a good argument, start it with always or never. You always do this, you never do that. I can argue with that in a heartbeat. But when I use qualifying words like some, or a few, or even too many, police officers are not speaking up. I would agree with you. But when you say police officers don't speak up when they should, that's just not true. Because I worked with some of the best men and women in the uniform. And they would speak up, and more need to. So start using qualifying words. Secondly, during this time, can you please schedule time to meet with people who don't look like you? I have had intentional conversations over the last week with a lot of my black friends. Some of you are already offended that I said that. Stop. Get over your offense. Because they weren't offended. Because we had an honest conversation. I said, if I had an accounting issue that I didn't understand in my business, I would meet with my friends who are accountants. Because they have knowledge, they have a perspective that I need. Well, you know what? When we're talking about racism, I've only ever always been a white guy. I have no knowledge of what it's like to be a black man, so I need to have a conversation with you, and I need to listen more than I speak. Because when I start to understand the fact that my black friends are scared when they're pulled over, that one of my black friends in particular loves guns, has a concealed carry permit, but is afraid to carry a gun because even though he's a big teddy bear and would never hurt anybody, for any reason, he likes to carry a gun. And his friends are like, in today's world, you should probably pack. And he looked at me and he said, you know what, with this happening to unarmed black men, why would I want to be an armed black man? Why would I want to make a bigger threat? And as a white guy, I've never thought that. I'm learning. And as I'm learning, I can do better. Because sadly, a few years ago, I was one of the ignorant fools that when somebody said Black Lives Matter, I would say, yes, but all lives matter. Because it sounded good, right? I didn't understand what they meant. Now that I understand that, anybody with half a brain knows that all lives matter. But now I'm figuring out that anybody with half a heart has got to realize that our black brothers and sisters need our help right now. I'm also following people online that are encouraging me to learn more, that are stretching the boundaries of what I don't know. One of them in particular that comes to mind is Carlos Whitaker, because he said this week, white people, don't apologize for your privilege. Use it. Leverage it to make a difference. So I'm having conversations and I'm learning things I don't know, and I would recommend you do the same. And last piece of advice. Can we stop on social media saying things like, I've been praying and processing and thinking through this, so I haven't posted. But to everybody else who hasn't posted, your silence is deafening. Didn't you just say you were still processing? Maybe they're still processing too. Or maybe, just maybe, they're doing world-changing work in the area of race relations and ending racism, and it'll never make it on social media. That's possible. Because sadly, there are a lot of people yesterday during Blackout Tuesday who blacked out their social media feed, checked a box, and moved on with their comfortable lives. And there are also people who will never post on social media the world-changing things that they're doing. Which one's right? Which one's helpful? I want to find a balance between the two. I want to learn so I can do better, and when I do better, when I learn, I want to post it and bring it to my platform, because here's what I know. As a man of faith, I believe that God has given me the platform that He's given me. One of my favorite books in the Bible is the book of Esther, because Esther went through some horrible situations and then became the queen, the person with the most influence in the king's ear. And when her people began being oppressed and began being killed, it became very clear to her that God has you here for such a time as this, to leverage your influence with the powers that be to bring about change. Friends, I don't have it all figured out, but I'm trying to do something to solve this problem. Using qualifying words to open up the conversation, to invite dialogue is something. Meeting with my friends who don't look like me to find out what it's like to be in their world is something. And not berating other people for their quote unquote silence, so that when they do have clarity, they will speak out. That's something as well. And I'm having conversations with my family, my wife and my daughters, about what I'm learning and about what they're learning, because they're seeking understanding as well. But when we are afraid to have these conversations because we're afraid of our privilege or we're afraid of being offensive, the more we tap dance around these issues, the more offensive and awkward it is. I got news for you. If I sit across from you and we have a conversation, I'm liable to say something stupid out of ignorance. And I hope out of love you will look at me and say, let me give you another way to think about that. And if I'm open to it, then I learn, I grow, and I change. I'm trying to do something, friends. And I've probably offended some of you. But if you haven't been offended in the last few months, you're not paying attention. So use that offense to become better, to find your something that you're supposed to be doing, and get about doing it. Because there is no doubt in my mind that God has brought me through the job he brought me through and given me the platform he's given me for such a time as this. And my biggest fear is that my silence will be seen as complicity. So I hope you'll do something as well. And I want to hear about it when you do.